Hi guys, it's ASBYT and today we have something very exciting indeed. This is the much hyped, much talked about Samsung Galaxy Fold. I was lucky enough to be invited down to the Samsung KX Experience Centre in London just a few days ago, and whilst I was there, thanks to Samsung, I was able to get my hands on this bad boy. Yeah, that's right, in case you didn't know, this is a folding phone. Now, I'm lucky enough to be one of the first to get my hands on the updated version of the first retail available foldable phone. So now it's time to show you what happened in the quick unboxing and give you my first impressions review, my experience that I've had using this phone over the last couple of days. The pros, the cons, and who is this device actually really for? So without further ado, let's get straight to it. So in case you've been living under a rock, this is the Galaxy Fold. Named so because of course the device starts out as a phone and folds out to give you a ready-to-use tablet, thanks to its flexible plastic AMOLED display. Now it's common knowledge there were some fairly big design flaws with the original reviewers' units, and the release was subsequently delayed while those creases were ironed out. Creases, fold, that's a good one. The first units were a bit of a collapse. Collapse, fold, I've done it again. But Samsung listened, Samsung delayed, and they made the required changes that were necessary, and here we are. Apparently it's been tested to fold 100 times a day for 5 years. Although that's of course in a factory environment and not in everyday use. So before I go into everyday use, what are those changes? Well, there's 3 key areas that have been updated. So it's plastic on the inside and metal and glass on the out. And I actually thought before going hands-on with the device, the inner plastic display would make the device feel cheap. But due to that metal and glass outer display, it actually feels pretty premium, as the outer parts are what is in contact with your hands the majority of the time. The first change is the fact that the top and bottom sections of the hinge have had an additional piece added to stop people thinking it's a screen protector, peeling it off, and also to stop fluff, pocket lint, debris, etc. from getting in underneath and causing problems with the plastic display. For the same reason, they have also now made sure that the display now goes all the way underneath the bezel lip. The final main change is the hinge itself, which apparently now also has been altered to be more secure against foreign bodies. But to be fair, even though the device fits really nicely in my pocket, kind of like a bit of a TV remote, if I'm spending £2,000 on this device, I would be worried that anything small and hard would find its way through the closed flaps. That sounds very dodgy. Moving swiftly on. A few more similar potential durability issues before we continue. There's a warning on the wrapping about fingernails, which is a little bit disconcerting. Samsung also say don't press in the middle of the display when you are folding it in half, as this is where the cogs and moving parts etc. are, and of course you don't want those perforating through the display. Also, it doesn't have a water resistant rating, so I'd be a little bit scared about getting it wet in the rain. So this is actually marketed by Samsung as a folding phone, but I don't really agree with that sentiment, as it seems to me that the focus here is definitely tablet first, phone second. And we'll get into why that might be an issue shortly. So as it's definitely more of a folding tablet than a folding phone, its main selling point is of course its large 7.3-inch Quad HD AMOLED display when folded out. The screen real estate is really excellent. Now, I haven't personally used a tablet in quite a long time, and I didn't think I needed one until now. I felt that the ever-growing size of smartphone displays was kind of more than enough, and I found tablets just far too big and bulky, especially when traveling, for example. It was an extra bag filler that I didn't want or need. But the fact that I can put this in my pocket and still have that extra screen real estate makes browsing social media, reading news articles or books, viewing media or gaming just so much more immersive. The folded out size of the Fold really does hit the nail on the head. It's the sweet spot. It's big enough while still comfortably being able to be held in one hand. And weirdly, I've actually found that I've used it more when folded out actually in portrait mode than in landscape due to the positioning of the cameras on the back. It just feels a bit weird to hold with two hands with your fingers resting on the camera lenses. This has kind of meant that I've had a smartphone display in landscape mode above, and then I still have the portion of the display below to browse comments, etc. on YouTube as an example. Now, as well as the larger display, there's also extra functionality, and this feature you won't find on your usual smartphone. You can actually simultaneously use 3 apps at once and have as many as 10 apps open in customizable floating bubble form. So as an example, the other night I was watching football score updates on one app, then I had a WhatsApp group open on the second portion of the display, chatting to friends about the scores, etc. And my third app open was checking the odds for a possible little flutter. Now, this video isn't sponsored by William Hill by any means, and I certainly don't condone or advocate or promote gambling here. That was quite a long-winded way of saying I put a £1 accumulator on, don't judge me. So if you're a keen multitasker, this device is absolutely ideal. The plastic display looks better actually than I thought it would. HDR10+, it's accurate, certainly bright enough, and if you are looking straight on 95% of the time, I honestly don't notice the crease, even when I'm looking for it. The situations where you will visibly be able to see the crease mainly is, in my experience, when you have a kind of dark image on the display which is completely plain, and when you're looking at it from the side. So if you're looking over someone's shoulder that's using it, you'll be able to notice the crease. If you're the person holding it, which is probably the most important viewing angle, it hasn't been a problem for me. Because at the end of the day, who's going to be holding it looking at it like this? One thing that is unavoidable, however, in your line of sight when looking at the device is the camera section at the top right-hand side. And when you realise you already have a front camera on the front when the phone is folded, I think the cons of this section breaking the full screen view outweighs the functionality of taking selfies on a large display, but more on cameras later. Typing on the device in tablet mode is so-so. It is great for making notes, etc. with a big keyboard and space to view said notes, but at the same time, it's quite a stretch for my thumbs to reach the middle area of the keyboard with my medium to small hands. If you've got giganta hands, then you'll be fine. Samsung thought about this and actually altered the Samsung keyboard to have a gap in the middle and therefore bringing the letters closer to the touch. But I'm not a massive fan of the Samsung keyboard compared to the Google keyboard, and therefore I've kind of just got on with stretching the thumbs. Either way, whichever method you choose, you will have to kind of adapt the way you type on the display. It's probably something we'll all get used to, and I will update you in the future. So using the keyboard in tablet mode is a little bit cumbersome. You have the opposite problem when you have the phone folded. The outer display is simply, in my opinion, too small. At 4.6 inches, it's simply too fiddly. Many mistakes, corrections, retypes, etc. later, and I found myself wanting to always type in tablet mode, which is fine if you are going for a long typing session, but if you just want to respond to a social media post or quickly jot something down, for example, the thought of constantly having to open the device to type is not ideal. It's kind of pretty similar to when you would on a normal smartphone activate one-handed mode. That's not a feature I personally use, but if you do, you kind of understand what you're getting with that You kind of understand what you're getting with that outer display. Outside of typing, the outer display is great for scrolling through social media, quickly browsing the internet, checking emails, etc. And because the display is smaller than what I'm used to, for the pixel count, it does feel very, very sharp. Personally, on a version 2, I would definitely want to see a larger display on that front with less forehead and chin, because although Samsung have said they chose to do this to get people to use the tablet mode more, I would prefer if they had both viable options available and allowed the user to make the decision about which way they want to go. Give us both and then we can choose. Now, when you do switch between the outer display and inner, most apps continue where the outer display left off. Fittingly, this is of course called app continuity. See what they've done there? Now, for apps that are compatible, like Google Maps, YouTube, etc., it really is great. Using the phone, and then if you need to enlarge it, flipping it open and it continuing across is a really, really good feature. The challenge for Samsung, of course, now is to encourage third-party app developers, etc., to kind of take this on board. You can also choose continuity settings for closing the device again after it being in tablet mode. It can either continue back onto that front display or it'll close down the app. So this is good if you want to end calls, for example, when you just close the tablet but then you've been sat there on the phone like that. And that's not a good look, let's be honest. We've got the Snapdragon 855, not the 855 Plus, due to the fact that, as mentioned, it was due to come out a good few months ago now, and the Plus version of that Qualcomm SoC wasn't available at the time, and presumably to be cost effective, etc. They probably just thought, let's keep it as is. Not a huge negative, but if you are a gamer, I think 15% extra on that GPU performance might be a deal breaker for you, but the 855 is still an incredible SoC right now. 12 gigabytes of RAM, 512 gigabytes of storage, so it's certainly no slouch in this department. And these specs pretty much confirm that, again, multitasking, gaming, etc. is going to be a bit of a breeze, and on the whole, it's worked like a dream so far. We're only 2 days in, but it's been 2 good days. We're running with Samsung's One UI operating system on here, and as I said in my Samsung S10 Plus review, it's an absolute joy to use. I still wouldn't recommend it for those hardcore stock Android enthusiasts, but if you want a clean, user-friendly interface with quite a few nifty features, then this might just be the one for you. 2 slight negatives here are gestures don't work that great on the Fold due to that bottom lip. It's not something we usually see on a normal smartphone. The display is recessed from that lip, and therefore you have to kind of slide down the lip before then swiping up. Not a deal breaker, not horrific, but just something to point out. And also Samsung tend to be fairly slow with software updates. So shipping in the box with Android 9, don't expect Android 10 till probably February, March time next year. Battery life has been excellent, I must say, so far. And obviously, if you're using the small outside display a lot, it's going to be even better. 4,380 mAh capacity, which is split across 2 cells, as well as Quick Charge 2.0, wireless charging, and Power Share as well. Power Share, of course, being the ability to charge another device using the Fold. So if you have a pair of Galaxy Buds, which do come in the box, you can charge them using your phone. Now, I found that I've used Face ID, which is enjoyably quick as expected, more than the fingerprint scanner, as it's located on the bottom of the 2 side bezels, underneath the power button and the volume rocker. I find that because it's recessed under that top bezel, this process is actually a bit awkward, and thus I haven't really used it. Now, in terms of cameras, we have 6, which is mad. 3 on the back, consisting of a 12 megapixel wide angle lens with dual aperture at f1.5 to f2.4, a 12 megapixel telephoto lens with f2.4 aperture, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide angle lens with f2.2 aperture. In terms of video, we have a max of 4K at 60 frames a second, and slow-mo topping out at 720p 960 frames per second. We've got a dual camera setup on the inner display, a 10 megapixel lens with f2.2 aperture, and an 8 megapixel lens with f1.9 aperture, and a depth sensor. And as stated, we've also got that 10 megapixel lens on the front of the outer casing. f2.2 aperture as well. And as standard with the latest Samsung flagship devices this year, 4K at 30 frames a second on the front. So no 4K at 60 like the iPhone 11 Pro, for example, which is a bit of a shame, but to be expected based on the fact that the camera setup really is almost identical to that of the Galaxy Note 10 range. As expected, we have stereo speakers, and the quality of sound here simply adds to the viewing pleasure that the display gives you. And it also is 5G ready if you're willing to take that plunge yet. So it's only been 2 days, and of course my opinion may change as time goes on, but I made a highly critical video about the concept of folding phones back at CES 2019 when I saw and went hands-on with that Royoli FlexPly. And this has almost instantly made me question my beliefs. And while I feel this first gen product isn't the finished article, because it's too expensive, there are still potential durability issues, and that front display is, in my opinion, too small, I can certainly now see a market for this style of product. And really, whether the sales of this thing are good or not, I do believe foldables are going to come thick and fast from now on into 2020. And one thing it's definitely done is it's whet my appetite for version 2. I know it's just been released and I already want version 2. Thus is the wonderful world of tech and innovation. So there, I've said it. I was wrong, okay? My opinions have changed. I can't always be right, can I? And while I can't wholeheartedly recommend this first gen device, if you have the cash to flash, then it's certainly one of the coolest products on the market right now. And if you're going to be out using it, people are going to be, oh, hey, what, whoa, excuse me, what's that? That's pretty cool. I will certainly be using this going forward because even though it's not perfect, there are some pretty great features and there's nothing really available on the market like it right now. And if nothing else, it's pretty darn cool indeed. Or lit, as the kids say these days. Can I get away with lit? Probably not. As always, these videos take quite a long time to make, so if you did enjoy it and found it helpful, drop a like below, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I post a video. Daily tech, news, unboxings, reviews. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. ASBYT, peace out.